Hi, everyone, and welcome to the public engagement session for asset management planning for the Municipality of Brockton. We are here because we want public input in the municipality's next iteration of their asset management plan. My name is Alexa Wild. I am a senior asset management advisor with PSD Citywide. We are the consultant who is helping Brockton develop this asset management plan. So tonight, we're going to be talking about a few aspects about asset management. We're going to start with what is asset management. We want to make sure that everyone is talking the same language and understanding what we mean as what asset management actually is, why it's important for Brockton to have an asset management plan, what does Brockton's current infrastructure situation look like, and also concluding with how residents can provide input. So to start, what is an asset management plan and why does Brockton need asset management planning? So asset management in general is about getting the best value out of the assets that the municipality owns. When we talk about assets, we are talking about assets that provide a service. You can't have recreation without a recreation facility for that to occur in. You can't drive without the roads that you would be driving on. So we talk about these assets, but we want to spend as little as possible to have an acceptable service level. So what that means is basically we want the best bang for your buck. We want to make sure that we aren't spending too much money and wasting, but we want to make sure that we're getting value out of these assets that we've spent so much money on. So asset management is about looking at what the municipality owns, what condition it's in, whether it's meeting the needs of the community, and saving today for tomorrow's expenses. So if we know that an arena is going to need to be replaced in 50 years, let's start saving now and making sure that it's not a surprise when that comes up. So why can't we have it all? Asset management is about balancing between cost, performance, and risk. Really simply, it's if you don't spend enough money, you might put yourself at a bit more risk. Or if you spend too much money, you risk not funding other aspects of the municipality or having residents who are unhappy with their tax rates. But there's also performance handoffs. So if you spend the extra money, you might see a boost in performance that you're quite happy with. Or if you don't spend enough, not enough performance. A good example would be if you don't spend enough money on your roads, you're probably going to have a bunch more potholes. So there's always a balancing act and there's no right answer. It's always the right answer for your community. So why does Brockton need asset management? So number one is regulatory compliance. Is it the law? Yes. We have Ontario Regulation 58817 that mandates that all municipalities within the province of Ontario have to have asset management planning. But on top of regulatory compliance, we want to do it because it's the right thing to do. It improves reliability. So by having a structured approach, you're looking at asset maintenance costing less in the long run because you're going to have less emergency repairs and more proactive maintenance. There's better long-term system integrity, meaning the longer-term planning and projections can provide policy and decision makers with the information they need to make those informed decisions. And they're not just flying by the seat of their pants with a feeling. You have data-driven decisions. Cost savings. In the long run, asset management can minimize operational and replacement costs and help minimize the life cycle costs in the long run. Eligibility for funding. So asset management planning is a condition for several provincial and federal grants, including OSIF and the Canada Community Building Fund, which are two of the largest contributors to recurring grants in Ontario municipalities. So that's asset management, but what is an asset management plan? So an asset management plan, first of all, is a snapshot in time. We refer to it as a year end, but basically it's just a cutoff that says we're looking at what the municipality owned at this point in time. So that asset management plan addresses the current state of municipal infrastructure. So it's going to summarize how old is everything we own? What condition is it in? How much longer do we expect it'll last? It'll also talk about what improvements can be made to increase the confidence in your analysis and decision making. This is a work in progress. It's always going to have improvements. So it is a bit of a fluid document, but it's best to work with the best information you have at the time. So the process improvements that can be included in an asset management plan might be suggestions such as, let's do condition assessments. How can we better track our data? Can we update replacement costs to make sure that it's reflecting today's dollar, making sure we're considering inflation and today's construction costs? And an asset management plan is also going to look at the municipality's financial capacity to meet the long-term capital requirements. So based on how much the municipality owns, how much is the municipality currently spending on those assets? And is that enough to maintain what we already own? And if there is a gap, how do we close that gap? So I want to bring up an example that we can relate to, and I want to talk about buying a brand new house. So in an ideal world, you buy a house and there aren't any issues right away. I understand in reality, there might be a few little things here and there. However, chances are they're going to be covered by warranty. However, even though it's a brand new house, you know that the dishwasher is going to last about 10 years and the hot water heater is going to last 12 years. Washer dryer, 15 years. The roof, better plan for 25 years. Furnace, 20 to 30 years, etc. You can take everything in that house. So if you buy your house and don't start saving any money and you just make your mortgage payments and say, we'll just deal with everything as it comes, that's fine for the first few years. And you might say, look, this approach is totally fine. I'm staying on track, no worries. But when you get to that year 12, 13, 14, 15, 20, things start piling up. And now all of a sudden, the dishwasher and the hot water heater went in the same year, but I don't have anything in savings. So you take out a loan to make sure you can pay those off. But then, now the washer and dryer went. Crap. So you can fall behind really easily. Whereas if you know all of these things in your house are going to wear out and you start saving a little bit at the beginning, all of a sudden you have a home appliance or repair and maintenance fund that the dishwasher goes. You buy a new dishwasher because you've already been saving for the last 10 years. And in 25 years, the roof needs to be replaced. No problem. I have a roof fund and it's already been saved for. I don't have to take out a loan. I don't have to be paying interest on that loan. So now take that house and scale it up to something as large as Brockton, who owns water and wastewater and roads and bridges and buildings. And you can understand that there's a lot of assets that you need to be pre-planning for 10 years down the road, 25 years down the road, 100 years down the road. So we want to make sure that we don't get caught needing to replace a whole bunch of assets at the same time that we weren't planning for in advance. So what kind of assets does Brockton own? And what services do they provide? So as a very brief snapshot of Brockton's assets, there are over 374 kilometers of roads that Brockton has to maintain, snow plow, fill in potholes, lots of maintenance requirements, but also that's 374 kilometers of roads that at some point in their life cycle are going to have to be replaced. They own 35 bridges. There's 47 buildings and facilities. Now, that doesn't mean that everything is as large as, let's say, the Walkerton Community Centre. It can be smaller buildings for storage, for public works, etc. But that's still a lot of facilities that are needed for the municipality to function. But they all have a roof, they all have doors, they all have windows, and they all need to be replaced eventually. There's 22 vehicles, that's pickup trucks and fire department pumpers, etc. There's 40 kilometers of water mains. There's 37 kilometers of sanitary sewer mains. And there's lots more, but these are just some of the assets that we need to be planning for. So how much does that all cost? A lot. If we had to replace everything that Brockton currently owns, and we had to replace it today, it would cost about $345 million. Now, do we expect that we would ever need to spend that in 1 year? No, absolutely not. But when we're looking at all of the assets, we want to make sure that they're on a level playing field when we are comparing them. So we use this replacement cost to evaluate what proportion of the inventory each category takes up. So our road network here is about 52% of the value of everything that Brockton owns. Next up is bridges and culverts. So we have about $71 million worth of bridges here in Brockton. After that, water and sewer services, those utility services take up just about 20% of what Brockton owns. And as you continue going down the line, buildings are 8%, and between machinery and equipment, parks and land improvements, vehicles, furniture, storm sewer, that's about another 10%. So in other words, Brockton has a population of just under 10,000 people. With that replacement cost of $645 million, that means each Brockton resident owns approximately $66,000 worth of assets. That is how much value you are receiving from your municipal assets. So, average condition of assets. Now, there is no magic number as to what you should be targeting for asset condition. However, when you time, it can help you see any trends of whether you're maintaining over the long term, whether you're going up, whether you're going down. And part of this asset management plan is making sure that we look at different asset categories and see how can we better measure our condition of our assets. And some are easier to measure than others. So for example, a road network, you might be able to hire a consultant and say, tell us how good our roads are. But it's really hard to look at furniture and fixtures. So that's going to be, office desks and chairs, and say, what condition are each of these in? So you have to take these numbers with a bit of a grain of salt, but it gives us a trend as to where the municipality is investing money. And typically, when you're spending enough money, you're keeping everything in a fairly good condition. And if you're falling behind, things will deteriorate a little more. So you can see here that the best condition that we're seeing is really in your bridges, your water and sewer services, your storm services. They're in pretty good shape. Roads, right middle of the road. Parks and land improvements, again, pretty middle of the road, and a bit of an underinvestment in furniture and fixtures. Now, again, grain of salt, it's only as good as the information that you can measure. So part of this will be recommendations to make sure that we have metrics to measure these so that they can be consistently replicated over the years to see any trends. So why is this condition information important? The physical condition of assets can identify repair needs so that we know what needs to be maintained and proactively maintain it so that we can minimize any disruptions to residents. We don't want a road to get in such bad condition that we have to close it and have detours where we can proactively make sure that we do that pavement patch and get everyone back on their way. So a little bit of food for thought is data, such as condition ratings, is only useful if it reflects reality. So how do your experiences with different pieces of infrastructure that Brockton owns align with this data? So did anything surprise you? Did you think the roads were in much better shape than 51%? Or were you thinking, wow, 51% is really high? Just think in the back of your mind of how you interact and whether that aligns with what you see. So, what does tomorrow look like? Factors that shape tomorrow's infrastructure. So, when we're planning for the future, infrastructure such as roads, buildings, parks, water mains, they're going to shape a community for decades. So, we need to think decades ahead when we are building them. We want to ensure that these investments are in the best interest of today's residents and taxpayers, but also tomorrow's. So we want to keep up with evolving expectations. And when we incorporate broader changes and trends and factors, we can make sure that you're getting that best bang for your buck in the long run. So those considerations include, are we expecting any changes in population? Either increase or decrease? Are there any specific economic development goals? How does this affect the municipality's environmental sustainability? Is the condition of the existing assets okay? Do we need to improve them? Service affordability. Is it affordable to residents? Is there reasonable tax allocations to each of the service areas? And we also want to make sure that we are prepared for any unexpected events. So another food for thought is lifestyles change as you reach different stages of your life. So they can shift based on your age. Have you recently moved out of your parents' house? Or have you recently retired? Family dynamics. Did you just have a baby? Technological advances. Maybe now you're considering purchasing an electric vehicle, whereas you hadn't in the past. How have your day-to-day routines changed in the last 5 to 10 years? Has this impacted what infrastructure services you rely on? Are there any more or any asset types that you rely more on or are more interested in, or vice versa? Have you become less reliant on anything and become less interested in any asset types? So growth in Brockton. There's trends throughout Ontario, population growth. Some places are seeing population decline. Within Walkerton, we've seen a slight population jump between 2016 and 2021. However, the Walkerton official plan was a planning document that had some population projections, and it projected a 2026 population of 5,778 people. So we haven't quite met that original trajectory, which is pretty normal, where it's really difficult because there's so many factors to accurately project what population growth will look like. However, growth will affect services. There's going to be more properties paying taxes towards those services, but we have to be careful that we are keeping up with the needs of the community as the population changes. And it's also really important to ensure that a municipality can afford what you already have before expanding services and further burdening the tax base. So another food for thought. How have any past population changes impacted your experiences with different infrastructure services? So this might be recreational facilities, whether they're available, how many there are, how many parks, and what types of amenities are in those parks. Roads, are there more vehicles on the roads? Are they in better or worse condition? And another thought to do with growth is how important is it to you to preserve the municipality's current character, charm, and feel while balancing those priorities associated with growth? So we want your input, what we're asking for, and how to make your opinion count. So as we are developing this next iteration of the asset management plan, we want to make sure that residents have the opportunity to bring forward their priorities. Are you happy with the current services that are being provided by the municipality? Would you like existing funding reallocated in any way? And if you're not happy with services, would you be willing to pay more to improve those services? Or would you accept a decrease in some service areas if that meant reducing future tax increases? So some food for thought is, which infrastructure services do I value the most? And when considering that, where do I stand on the following statements? Number one, I'm willing to make trade-offs between different infrastructure services if it means keeping cost increases to a minimum. So that means tax increases, fee increases, or water sanitary rate increases. Number two, I am willing to pay more for services if it means an improvement in my quality of life. Or three, I am not willing to pay any more for infrastructure services. So with those questions in mind, how can I make my input count? So the municipality really wants to hear from residents to ensure that municipal infrastructure planning meets the needs and expectations of the residents. So please consider providing your input by completing the online survey, which is available on the municipal website at www.brockton.ca/asset management. If you have any questions, please reach out to the municipality and we will try and get an answer back to you as soon as possible.